Welcome to the Mike Litton Experience Podcast. Mike has over 31 years experience in real estate, finance, and investing. He's passionate about being a father, a teacher, a realtor, an investor, and a leader. Everyone has a story, and our passion is to help them tell it. And now, introducing the host of the Mike Litton Experience, Mike Litton.
So what can you expect from the Mike Litton Experience? You can expect stories that will inspire, motivate, advice that will sharpen your focus, and expert information on real estate, finance, and market conditions.
Coordinator and have the transaction coordinator send them to the buyer to sign. That is wrong on a number of levels, right? So, what's your defense to that? Well, I just sent it, they told it if they had any questions, give me a call. That's not going to be a good defense, right?
No kidding.
You need to go over those with the client. You need to spend time on the RPA, on the purchase agreement, clearly the disclosures. If you're going to get hauled into court, it's going to be a disclosure issue.
Yeah.
The TDS, first thing I do, transfer disclosure statement. I go through the TDS. I'm always looking for something in the TDS that's not done right. They didn't check the box, yes or no, the above are not working in operating condition, right? Or my favorite is the second page, paragraph, page 2, paragraph C, where it just says no, all the way down. Well, I know you didn't read it because half of that you can't answer no to, right? Half of it it's going to have to be a yes, right?
Which one is it, right?
Yeah. And so I'm sitting here thinking, okay, did the real estate agent go over the document with the client and say, are you sure that that's the answer? So like we added the word mold to paragraph C1. We added it years, the legislative body did because they created the TDS. And they added the word mold. So you can't say no to paragraph number 1 because mold is everywhere. And so I tell my clients, and the client says, well, yeah, there's mold, I guess. I said, listen, I have a graduate certificate in hazardous materials. I know what mold is, but I always say to them, I say, do you know the difference between mold and mildew? And they go, no. I go, that's why we don't call it mold. It's a stain, right? That's all it is. And so it's just interesting to me and real estate agents all the time. And I'm always very thankful for the ones that actually want to learn things, right? And those are the ones that are the best. It's the ones that know everything that are usually going to create the most problems. So, but we all have our style and God knows I love what I do and I'm able to help people. So it's all good.
Yeah, that's cool. So let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Is there anything you'd like to cover before we wrap up?
I know I'm watching your clock. I figured, where did that hour go?
I cannot thank you enough for doing this. I really.
Oh no, thank you. I'm a typical lawyer. Put a microphone in my mouth and I'm off to the races. So, anything in particular, take care. Read the document. When you're in a real estate transaction, you really need to ask questions. Don't get rushed through anything, or everything. Take the time, and with the client, you should spend time. When I talked to the Department of Real Estate about the RPA, for example, they said 16 pages, and yet I know people that just send it and just say, here, sign it, right? It's like, did you go over it with them? So now we have like the technology you're using right here. We have the technology to video conferencing. There's so many of those where I can sit down with a client, they can see it on their screen, I can see what they're looking at on my screen, and it's like, okay, paragraph number 1, of course I get into, we call that the recitals, that's the linking part of the document to the other. So, but can we go through that, and then read it to them or whatever. And then my favorite, of course, is liquidated damages. I love that. And it's in bold print for a reason, right? We really shouldn't be explaining it because it really has huge legal consequences. So the client says to me, well, what does it mean? And I say, I don't know. Well, I clearly know, but I say, well, let's read it together. Right. And so I'm better reading upside down, probably like you, I'm better reading upside down than right side up. And so I'll just go through it with them and they'll look at me and they'll go, oh, I get it. Because if you actually read it, but I don't know how many people I've met in my career that have actually read the paragraph.
Right.
And if you read it, it doesn't apply to all situations. And so somebody asked me the other day, should I initial liquidated damage? And I said, well, I don't know. What do you think? I mean, you're the buyer or the seller? Well, you're the buyer. Okay, so if it's a declining market, liquidated damages protects you in the event of a free fall, right? If it goes from $1 million to 500,000, because you're only limited by 3% of the purchase price or the deposit actually paid, right? But if it's an improving market, market's going up. Now I know I'm going to probably generate a whole bunch of lawsuits, but market's going up. Why would you initial it? Right? If you're the buyer, I mean, you just wrote a blank check. And so I tell people, have that honest conversation with a client. Now, unfortunately, as real estate agents, we're trained everywhere there's a place to initial, they should initial. I don't know that that's 100% appropriate, but most of
some brokerages that require it to be initial.
Yeah.
There's some brokerages that will not pay you your commission check if it's not initial. And so, because their attorneys have told them, this is our advice, this is what we're advising you to do. So yeah, it's definitely something that they need to be talking about, and they need to have a frank conversation with it. By the way, just real quick, if the TDS says that the septic used to work, maybe order a certification. Yeah. A pump and cert, right? If it says it used to work.
Yeah, I would think that would be a good idea. I think that's a message that it's not working currently. I sold a house for a guy, and I really liked the guy, but he really had no choice. I was a court-appointed sale. I had to sell it. And this guy is a 4-bedroom, 1-bath house, and he knew enough to take the toilet. Can you say toilet? Commode, biffy. He takes the biffy out, puts it in the backyard. So this house has no toilet. Right, because he knew you couldn't get financing on the house if you didn't. You had to have at least a working toilet in the house. I just thought, wow, these are some of the most amazing people, and he thought of that. I go, well, that's really good. I sold the house anyway, right? But the guy paid cash for it because you weren't going to get a loan because the lenders all want to see at least one toilet, working or not. Working or not, they want to at least see one. Well, it's in the backyard, so clearly not hooked up to the sewer line. It was in National City too. It was like, oh boy. Anyway, I really like the guy, but he did some bad things. It was too bad. So
yeah, people do that.
Yeah,
do that. It's they get angry at the wrong people for the wrong reasons sometimes, and they take. I mean, that there was a couple in Marietta that did $385,000 worth of damage to a house that they had purchased brand new just a few years prior, but they were losing it to the bank. And they filled the toilets full of concrete, and they did all kinds of just awful things. Took a sledgehammer to a bunch of stuff, and they were actually in our business. She was a realtor, and he was a lender, licensed, and they went to prison.
Well, that's criminal, by the way, because that's destruction of the security interest.
The collateral,
the collateral. So, so it's a year of law school, by the way, which I don't recommend going to law school just to get that. I can tell it to you in a sentence, but that's criminal. I mean, the lender didn't do that to you. The house didn't do that to you. You just got into a bad spot, and it happens.
The market shifted, and they couldn't recover. And you can't blame the property, and you can't blame the buyer, and you can't blame the lender. I mean, come on, So
it's amazing the number of defaulted properties today. If you go into the CRS tax database, you can see, like in Carmel Valley, there's like 16 homes that are upside down, and that's easy enough information. Notices of default have been filed, things like that. So we have a bankruptcy attorney in our office who's a broker with our office, and he says, I haven't seen this many short sale opportunities in a very long time. So the market is changing again, but it's always going to be that, Mike, right? I mean, where are we happiest? I mean, I don't know, at the top of the bell curve? No, our market is always moving, and we're always moving with it, because you have to, if you're going to be good at what you do, you've got to be able to adjust quickly. And so, and you've got people that want to buy houses, you got people who want to sell houses, take good care of everybody. They'll tell everybody they know, right? So
yeah, we just had one the other day, and it's a lady that was referred to me by the ghostwriter for my books. I'm writing 3 books, and I start the first one. In fact, I want to interview you for my home ownership book. And I've got another one that I'm writing for realtors that I want to interview you for too. But we start month after next. We start January 2024. And he sent this lady to me, and she's a single mom. She's trying to hold on to her property. She's having a rough time with the lender, all that kind of thing. So I got involved with it and started helping her, kind of coaching her, right? There isn't any commission in here. Okay. It's not like I'm being paid. I'm not. I'm literally just trying to advise her. And the other day she sent me a text message and said, God is good. And I said, okay, I agree with this. What's up? Right. And she said, that the California mortgage relief had given her a grant to catch her mortgage up, and so she's not going to lose her house to foreclosure.
Wow.
And she's a stage 4 cancer patient right now, and single mom, 3 boys. There's just a lot going on in her world, and now the mortgage part of it has been handled, and that's what we're entering here. Is we're entering a really rough time for some people because the economy has had to be slowed down. There have been a lot of layoffs. There have been a lot of things that have happened that it's a ripple effect, right? And it has an impact on people's lives. I had a conversation the other day. One of my assistants called a gentleman that was on the NOD list. And all we were doing was reaching out to try to help. And he called me up and he told her, he goes, I know Mike, I'll call him. So he calls me up. He used to work with us in the mortgage business a long, long time ago, 20 years ago. And he was able to get his loan modified through the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB, through their ombudsman office.
Right.
I didn't know much about the ombudsman office. I learned a ton from him the other day. And so one of the things that I'm recommending to people is, listen, if you're having a tough time getting a loan modification, because if you go to your bank, right, if you go to your customer service department, if you go to them, they're going to modify it if it's in the best interest of the owner of the loan, not you. They don't work for you. They work for that bank or that lender, right? The investor is what we call them. And so they work for them. They're not in this deal for you. But the ombudsman office is more of an independent third party. Okay. Right. There's another organization called NACA, NACA, NACA.com. We just had Bruce Marks, the founder, on the other day on our podcast. And Bruce and I have quite a history together. We started working together back in 2011. And his organization and me volunteering with my radio show, we've saved hundreds of homes in San Diego and in LA from foreclosure.
Yeah.
So there are solutions. And part of the reason we're writing the book on home ownership is we want people to understand there's deed in lieu thereof. There are short sales. There are all kinds of different options, different things you can do, bankruptcy, right? And you can recover from these things. It's not the end of the world. Right. There are people out there right now, and you know this, Kevin, there are people out there right now that owned a home, lost it, went bankrupt, had all kinds of awful things happen, and they now own a house again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are ways to do it, and your FICO score will recover. So what we're doing with this book that we're starting to write month after next is we're literally taking the case to millennials as to why homeownership needs to be part of the American dream again.
Right. Okay.
According to the National Association of Realtors, the average homeowner nationwide, their net worth is over $300,000. Right. The average tenant's net worth is less than $8,000.
Right.
You take that $292,000 delta, multiply it by tens of millions of millennials that have PTSD because of the Great Recession. Sure. And all of a sudden, our 3/4 of the nation's net worth is real estate. Our standard of living in this country is at risk.
Right.
It's at risk. And how are these kids, these millennials that are now having babies, how are they going to send their kids to college? How are they going to be able to afford to do those things?
Yeah.
If they don't own a home, right? Yeah. So I'm just crazy enough to believe that I can drive a national narrative with this book and take the case directly to millennials with this book as to why they need to own a home.
Sure. It's the rent versus buy analysis. My office was on Camino del Mar, right? So I was right on the main drag. And we had little flyer stands. We had the $5 million house and all these things. The one flyer I couldn't keep on the stand was the one that says, why rent when you can buy, right? And it was like, because nobody wants to be rent. But politically, we know that the majority of people in California today are renting. We look at housing affordability issues are dismal. I mean, it's just in San Diego, I got interviewed in 2001 by Fox News asking me because affordability had dropped down to 26% in San Diego. We've seen it go the other way. We've seen it come back down again. And they said, can it get worse? And I said, well, take a look at San Francisco. They're at 16, right? Well, today they're not even in the double digits. They're at 9 and 6. Yeah. Affordability has just become a real problem. And you know what? The current economy is really not doing much to it. It's still an issue. And so I think we need to figure out ways for people to be able to afford to own. There's the pride of ownership and all of that. And I'm with you. I mean, I'm 100% on that. I just think that we should help people, get housing. It's important. And I think a lot of it has to do, there's a lot of, in '03, the low end had completely stopped selling, and we never knew it. And if you remember, and you do remember it, that housing affordability was at an abysmal low. And so entry level, they just stopped. They couldn't afford it anymore because the prices kept going up out of control. Well, the high end continued to sell. So we didn't realize that the low end had stopped until August of 2005. And in August of 2005, this high end stopped selling, and we realized, oh, wait a minute, the move up housing doesn't exist anymore because the low end stopped 2 years earlier, and that's when everything started crashing, right? And we just went, and then they were doing foreclosures, and we're drinking water out of a fire hose, and so it got really ugly. And I ran the foreclosure department for a good sized brokerage in Tucson, and it was all I could do back in the early '80s. All I could do to try to help these people sell their home before the bank got it. And the banks, they never talked to you about short sales. What was that, right? It was foreclosed. I did a lot of stuff for free because, there wasn't any room to pay me on things. I wasn't worried about it. I was helping people. But you look today, the banks are given incentives to do the short sale. I think people should not be losing homes. I just don't think it's right. And so banks have incentives. There's a lot of incentives. There's how much they got to keep in reserves changes. If they do a foreclosure, they got to put more money in reserves than if they just do a short sale, and things like that. So I think you're absolutely spot on. There's a lot of great opportunities for people to get home ownership, but then also not to lose home ownership. And I think that I hate to think anybody having to go through that. A short sale is much better than a foreclosure. Less hit on your credit. You're buying a house fast again. I sold a house to a couple that had a VA foreclosure 9 months earlier, and this was back in the '80s, but they had lived in Cleveland, Ohio, and so they told her, "You're going to die if you stay here," and not because it was Cleveland, but because it was cold. And so she moves to Tucson, Arizona, and they had the house got foreclosed on back in Ohio, and I got them another house. So we're here to help people, and I don't think there cannot be a no answer anywhere. We've got to help them, even though maybe others have said you can't do that. Remember moving out of your house when you're 14? Other people said, "Well, you can't do that." I go, whoops, I forgot. I'm paying it back today. I mean, that's my whole thing. The last 25 years, I've been paying it back because people helped me. I can give you names of people that helped me in the '70s and the '80s. And I just feel like I owe a debt. And I owe the debt to the real estate community. I think I owe a debt to buyers and sellers. And so I just take it from that point. It's from a position of gratitude, right?
And that's what I do too. One of the things that happened in the last 31 years that I've been doing this plus is I had people that popped up as mentors, and they would pull me aside when they didn't have the time. They'd pull me aside and say, "You're going at this all wrong. Go this way," right? Or "You're doing this the wrong way. Here's the way you need to do it." And so I believe it's paying it forward. And so a big part of doing this podcast that we're doing and writing the books we're doing is I'm looking to pay it forward. I'm looking to try to help anybody that I can help, however I can help them, right? And so it's a big part of it, and it's in honor, quite honestly, of the people that are not here anymore. My grandfather, we lost him in 2007. My grandfather was a huge influence in my life. And Joe McCarroll was a huge influence in my life. Joe was a broker here in Escondido. And when he didn't have to do it and he didn't have the time, he pulled me aside and changed my life. And I told Alan Nevin the other day, I said, "Alan, you changed my life. You don't know it. You don't realize it. But let me tell you how you changed my life, buddy." And I went through the whole thing, and he got a little emotional. He and I are really good friends now.
Yeah.
And he's been a regular on my radio shows. And now he's been on the podcast twice, and has a new book out, by the way, that everybody should read, called The Next Half Century. It is absolutely incredible. So, this is about taking care of people and paying it forward for me. And I cannot thank you enough, Kevin, for being on here with me. I'm completely, totally honored and humbled you were here. And I cannot thank you enough for your time.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here. I very much appreciate, you never would have known you, but you asked, and I'm happy if I could have, spread some kind of cheer for somebody out there that hopefully will now think about buying rather than renting. I think that's
I know
great.
you helped a lot of people, and you helped
Thank
me.
you so much. Thank
I
you, Mike.
appreciate you, buddy.
You're awesome. Thank you, sir.
Take care. Thanks
All
again.
right. Take care now.
We hope you enjoyed another episode of the Mike Litton Experience. If you did, do us a favor, smash that subscribe button, tell your friends, family, and coworkers about our program, and wherever you get your podcasts, please leave us a rating. It helps us to connect with quality people just like you.
And that's a wrap. Another episode of the Mike Litton Experience in the books. Reach out to Mike on Instagram at Litton Realty. Want to meet with Mike? Check out calendly.com/Rio760.